Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. I'm Marilyn Maya, and today I'm going to do an early wrap-up. But before I do that, I wanted to give a big thank you not only to the new subscribers, but to the people who have voted on my last video, which was picking a classic for me. So who won? Okay, we had these two almost neck and neck, and that's Middlemarch by George Eliot and O Pioneers by Willa Cather. So Middlemarch really won. But let me just tell you one thing. When I went back and picked up O Pioneers, not only did I discover two beautiful things that made me want to pick it up first. One was the wonderful photo of Alexandra, our heroine. And of course, I already told you about the Reader's Digest flapper that talked about it. But then, hiding in the middle, and I won't show you her face, but it's a schoolgirl. A schoolgirl was reading this, and her name is in the back, and I think I'm going to look her up if she's in Hawaii and send her back her picture, because this was from 2012, so she's quite older now, and it says the name of her teacher. So isn't that great? Don't you love to find things like that? Yeah, I'm going to read this as well as reading Middlemarch together. And who am I? I never read more than one book at a time, but this is an exception. Like I said, I want to thank all the new subscribers, and please, if you don't want to leave a comment, because I tend to write very large answers to comments, and you might not feel comfortable with that, just leave an emoji or say hi, because I really appreciate all of you who watch my channel. Anyway, let's find out why I am making a wrap up, and it's not the end of January. I have read more books this month than I have in the past year. And of course, the past year was difficult for everyone. Me too, getting COVID twice, once on vacation, and also having a couple of falls. So I was really surprised to find out that I have read all of these books. Well, not all of them, I'm going to go that. And it's not even the end of January. I'm going to preface this video by saying that a lot of these books were from a haul that I had done, and I will leave that below. And in that haul, a lot of those books were not the typical kind of books that the baby boomer booktuber usually reads. They're kind of booktube darlings, new releases, highbrow kind of books. Not saying that I don't read literary fiction, which I definitely do. And I have two 5-star books in here. But some of the books I wasn't as excited about them as maybe other people here on BookTube are, or other readers. So let me preface this by saying this is just my opinion, and your opinion might be different, of course. We're all different. But so let's start. Okay, so the first book I did not finish, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to finish it, is The Secret Years of Agnes Sharp, which is a mystery by Leonie Swann, translated from the German by Amy Bojang. And this is a very popular book. I was very lucky to find it in the library. The reason that I put it down, two reasons. One is that March Mystery Madness is coming up, and I'm going to be one of the hosts, so I might pick this up again. The second reason is it's a very unusual, and you might like this. It kind of threw me for a loop for a minute, because I was used to reading, Agatha Christie and other kinds of classic detective fiction, and this is an older woman who starts like a home for elderly people. She turns her home into sort of an elderly home that's not an institution. And a lot of the people that are in the home have very severe disabilities, which I can understand. And I'm glad I'm not, in that situation. But that's not why I put it down. It was just that it's done very differently. It's written in a very unique way, where there's animals, and there might be some kind of a tiny bit of magical realism. I don't know, but I think that a lot of people who like maybe a cozier mystery that's done very uniquely might really like this. So I thought I would, even though I didn't read it or I did read a little bit of it, I thought I would mention it in case this tickles your fancy. Okay, now what about the books I did read? And I'm going to start with a book that is very popular on BookTube. People that I respect a lot have loved this book. And for me, it left me a little cold. And I'll tell you why. It's called Dinosaurs by Lydia Millet. And just so you know, it's not about real dinosaurs. And yet it is in a way. So what is it about? Let me read you something I'm going to read you the first sentence and tell you why I liked it and why I was a little disappointed at the same time. Wonderful first sentence. And the chapter title, which I love chapter titles, by the way, says morning. Not like good morning, the other kind of morning. When he decided to leave New York, he chose Arizona because of some drone footage he had seen. It wove through the canyons of red rock mountain foothills, over sage green scrub and towering cacti with their arms outstretched, then up into the higher elevations where there were forests of ponderosa pine. Sky Islands was what they called those desert mountains. So he's going to walk from New York, or he did in this book, to Arizona. So that was the part that I was looking forward to. And as you can see, there's beautiful descriptions of Arizona in this book and other things. But I wanted to know more about the walking part. And he takes another walk, a long walk, in the book to somewhere else, another long walk. But yet we never really see the act of him walking. And I thought that was very interesting, and I wanted to see more of that. But, okay, so what is this a book about? I wrote down, someone said, not me, someone said, there's always someone on the line, and I had to write this down. Dinosaurs is a story about an extraordinarily wealthy white man struggling to make his way in the modern world. Okay, that was a little snarky, but it's not totally wrong. Okay, this is what I'll say about the author, what the author was trying to do. Of course, I don't know for sure, but it seemed like the framework of the book was Arizona and the dinosaurs, which were birds. So the bird descriptions, the Arizona descriptions are the framework and other things that she wanted to say for the story. And so to me, the characters were not totally believable. They almost had like a magical realism to them. I'm saying magical realism, but it's really not. But to me, it was not the main focus of the book. The main focus of the book was the place, not the people. So I'm going to read you something from it to show you what I mean. So he says, they're talking about how dinosaurs were gone and now it seems the birds are gone, and so we're talking about environmental stuff here, and I think that's also what the author was trying to bring out. You got to be a generalist in the new climate, but that's not enough either. If there's too much poison around, we're talking pesticides mostly, agrochemicals everywhere. Take the sparrows. So anyways, I'd pick raven. A raven can kill, but will he eat garbage? Yes, he will. And then he says, in another part of the book, good news, maybe the insects would handle it, since the dinosaurs didn't have it in them. The insects might be naturals at revolution with their hive minds, their brainless, decentralized intelligence. That was the answer, insects, even more ancient than the birds, a formidable legion. So if you really like this kind of framework, you're going to love this book. But what is it about? Okay, so Gil, he, like I said, that's his name. He's rich. He's very rich. And but he wants to give back, and he says, but also I wanted to pay for something. When you have a lot of money, you never pay for anything. You never feel the cost. So you live like everything is free. There's never a trade-off, never a choice or a sacrifice. Makes you give up your time. I wanted the change to cost me, I wanted to earn it. So, all right, you might think how many rich people would say anything like that. Well, Gil is a man who seems a little shadowy, as do the other characters in the book to me. So he moves to Arizona walking, and he moves next to a couple with 2 children, and they live in a glass house. Really, a glass house. I mean, it's not all glass, but he can see right through their walls and see what they're doing. And he makes friends with them, and slowly, because of his breakup, he starts to slowly come out of his shell and get involved and with this family. And I hope I haven't told you too much, because the plot in the book it's very gradual. There's not really a big, aha moment. It's a slow read. And like I said, it's not so much about the people. The people almost seem too good to be true, including Gil to me. And they seem to be shadowy figures that are walking around in this near this glass house. And in fact, the glass house is mentioned a few times. And he lives in a big palatial estate. So we're talking rich people here. But I'm sure that the author is trying to tell us something about the environment, about animals, about what we're doing to the earth. I'm sure that the walk, even though I wanted to hear more about the walk, just the fact that he's walking and not taking an airplane or even a car has something to do with the environment, fossil fuels and all that. I know a lot of people now who are thinking about not taking too many plane rides because of the environment. Anyway, I gave this 3 stars. I'm sure you might like it more than I did. I'm a more character-driven person with a novel. I have to feel something for the characters. They have to be more than shadowy figures to me. And but I see the writing in this book. And this, did I mention this is Lydia Millet, and she's a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize and the National Book Award. I think her novel was Friends, no, I'm sorry, that's another. It's the author of A Children's Bible, a National Book Award finalist, and one of the New York Times 10 Best Books of 2020. So I guess this is her follow-up. So if you've read any of her books, or you have anything to say about what I'm saying about this book, or if it resonates with you, please let me know in the comments. I think I talked enough about this book. Okay, so let's go. So I gave it 3 stars. Now on to my 4-star read, and that's The Vulnerables by Sigrid Nunez. And I had a lot of talks, a lot of discussions with Lindy from, I'm not sure if she read the book, but we talked about, she got me clear, as she usually does, on what the author might have been trying to do and why I had mixed feelings toward this book. But ultimately, I gave it 4 stars. So this is a pandemic era novel. And, in many places it reads like a memoir. And in many places it also reads like installments, sort of different periods of this woman's life, who is an author, who's a famous author, very much like the author here. So it's a book about writing and authors and women friends who get together and talk about politics, who talk about a lot of things, and also about the lockdown and the people who are lucky enough to have been able to stay home, so rich enough to stay home. And the author is one of these people, and she's a very sensitive person. I really liked a lot of this book. So the plot, such as it is about a woman who is asked to pet sit for a very interesting parrot, and finds out that she's not the only human that's going to be in the house, and how they get along. And also about vulnerables, because she's a woman of a certain age, and I related to that. There's a couple of parts in the book where she feels vulnerable, many parts of the book where she feels vulnerable, and I appreciated that part. And so she finds she'll have a roommate, another roommate, not only the parrot, but also the way the parrot is written was very, very interesting to me, was the most interesting part of the book to me. So have you read The Vulnerables? Do you disagree with me? Do you agree with me about anything? I haven't read many pandemic era books, so this might be my first or second. I thought it was very well done. I did feel it was a little disjointed in certain places, especially in the beginning. But there's also a lot of literary references, which sometimes I like. I read somebody said that what reader doesn't like literary references? I can understand that sentiment, but I also feel that it can be overdone and maybe make some readers feel that they're not smart enough, or you have to look up, okay, what does she mean by that? So yeah, that's something that you might not bother you, and it doesn't bother me unless it's done too much. So the cover is kind of funny. It's the parrot upside down, and I love animals, so this part, and he is such a interesting creature that it did make the book 4 stars for me, among other things. Then I read a very small novella, my first Annie Ernaux. Now I have just started reading translated fiction, maybe in the last 2 years. Though of course I've read translated fiction that I didn't really know was translated fiction. But this is The Young Man, and it's a very tiny book. Maybe it's not the best place to start with such a renowned writer. So she won the Nobel Prize for Literature in 2022, and all her books are all over the internet. And what is this about? So this is her latest book, came out in France last May, and it sees Ernaux in full possession of her powers describing an incendiary affair she had in her 50s with a man 30 years her junior. Like I said, there was a few things that I didn't love about this book. Maybe it was in the translation. A lot of, or maybe it's my vocabulary. Like she says dereliction a lot. And I'm thinking, okay, derelict. Maybe it's not a dereliction of duties. So I'm thinking that it wasn't, but I think what it really means in this context was the abandonment. So I liked the beginning more than I liked the rest of the book, where she talks about, where the writing is really very precise and very beautiful. I love the way she opens the book, and I don't want to read too much from this book because, like I said, it's a very short book, and I don't think it can be spoiled. What I loved about the book also was the references to France, where she was born, her middle-class upbringing, and how this young man that she is having an affair with reminds her of her upbringing and her past. So 5 years ago, I spent an awkward night with a student who had been writing to me for a year and wanted to meet me. Now this part shows her writing, so I'll read this part right after that. Often I have made love to force myself to write. I hope to find in the fatigue, the dereliction that comes after, reasons not to expect anything more from life. I won't read any more than that, but it really intrigued me. And there was dereliction again. So I say again because it comes up maybe twice again. So she hoped to find in the fatigue, the abandonment. So we think of derelict of duty. So if you can let me know what else this could mean, let me know. But I gave it 2.5 stars because it was about basically it was about an affair she had with a younger man. And though the writing was really nice, I want to read something a little more chunkier to get a feel of the author and why she's a renowned writer and why she won this Nobel Prize. So if you've read this book, let me know. The next book I want to talk about is a 5-star read. It's maybe the best book that I've read. Well, it's the best book I've read this year for sure. But it's also maybe the best book that I'm going to read in the whole year. And that's a saying. I read 75 to 100 books a year since I've joined Booktube. Probably less before. So it's called The Jest of God, a novel by Margaret, Laurence, author of The Stone Angel. She's another Canadian author. I didn't know what to expect. It's not a chunky book. It looks chunky here, but it's really not a chunky book. And this is set in the early 60s. Here's a picture of her, I guess when she was really young. And like I said, she's a famous Canadian novelist. And she's a classic author, and she was born Jean Margaret Weymouth in 1926 in the prairie town of Neepawa, Manitoba, Canada. So she writes about that town. She calls it Manawaka, where half the town were Ukrainian immigrants and the other half Scots-Irish. So what is it about? To me, it's a story about a woman who's having a nervous breakdown. It's definitely about that. She's 34. She lives with her mother. Her mother depends on her not only for everything, including money, but for her time, her care. And her mother is quite abusive emotionally. And you begin to hate her in the beginning because she seems to, Rachel is being, she's a teacher, and she's having a breakdown. I say she's having a breakdown because she has these, she's talking to herself. She talks to the person and then she goes into these reveries for herself. I want to tell you something that Lindy, we read it together, by the way, and Lindy said to me that it's very hard to talk about a book that is so brilliant like this book was. And before I say anything else, I'll say that this book was made into a movie called Rachel, Rachel. And Paul Newman, who was married to Joanne Woodward, if you're old enough to remember, she played Rachel in this book, and he directed it. I haven't seen the book, but the movie, but I remember it in the 70s. I think you'll appreciate this book much more if you maybe understand that the early 60s were not what they are now, and women were not treated the way that they were treated, that are even treated now. So this woman is sort of born in the middle of that 60s revolution, the baby boomers that I'm from, and maybe the silent generation, where women were had certain duties to fulfill. They had to be virgins, for one. So this book, in a lot of ways, is a very sensual book. This woman is sexually frustrated. She's actually a virgin, and she hates that about herself. And there's a lot of sexual revelries in the beginning of the book that went, whoa, I wasn't expecting that from, a book that was written in the early 60s. And it shows her going into this kind of madness, which is a breakdown. And there's a lot of characters in this book, wonderfully written, wonderfully drawn, that affect her, usually in a negative way. And there is a plot where she meets somebody, and it goes on from there, and I don't want to spoil it because it's such a good book, but I wanted to read you something that might show you a little bit about the writing of this book. And this is something she's thinking. Nothing is clear now. Something must be the matter with my way of viewing things. I have no middle view. Either I fix on a detail and see it as though it were magnified, a leaf with all its veins perceived, the fine hairs on a man's hands, or else the world recedes and becomes blurred, artificial, indefinite, an abstract painting of a world. The darkening sky is hugely blue, gashed with rose blood, flame from the volcano, or wound, or flower of the lowering sun. The wavering green, the sea of grass, piercingly bright, black tree trunks, contorted, arching over the river. If this draws you in like it did me, you can understand how this writing is unbelievably fantastic, as well as the pacing of this book, the premise. Everything about this book is fantastic. 5+ stars. And I'm sorry, so sorry if I haven't explained it as well as I wanted to explain it to you. I loved this book so much. I loved reading it with Lindy, as I always do. And tell me below if you've read A Jest of God. Or tell me if you've watched the movie Rachel, Rachel. I'm going to watch it again, and so is Lindy, by the way. My last book that I want to talk about is also, it's a reread for me, and it's a 5-star read. I read it with Freddie from Sluggish Reader. I don't know if you know Barbara Pym. She's an underrated novelist, and I wanted to show you how much I esteem her. I don't collect many books, but so far I have all of these beautiful books. So I have Some Tame Gazelle, and I love these covers too. I have No Fond Return of Love. I have A Glass of Blessings. These were all wonderful. And Jane and Prudence. Excellent Women is lauded as her best book. I don't know if I agree with that. I talked about a book that I don't have right now, An Unsuitable Attachment, that I think I liked even better than this, but this might be more paced or more like a novel in the sense that it has a beginning, middle, and an end. It tells you a complete story. And let me just tell you, when I read it with Freddie, I did a close reading, and I liked it much better than I liked it the first time. Let me just read you in the beginning. Oh, what are we talking about? First of all, Margaret Lathby, you'll never forget that name once you read this book, is a spinster. And she calls herself a spinster at early 30s, which tells you that this book, written in this time, which was written in the year I was born, actually in the 50s, actually 50. And it shows you in England, because I don't have that experience of being 30 in 30 something in the 50s, but it shows you how women of 30, if you weren't married at 30, you were a spinster. And like I said before, my mother told me that because she married at 34, and she was so afraid she'd be an old maid, I guess the American form of spinster. So I'm going to read you something. So Margaret Lathby, she lives alone. She goes to church. So there's vicars. There's high church, low church in here. There's high comedy. And I looked up what high comedy meant compared to low comedy. So high comedy is kind of droll, dry humor, intelligent humor, where low comedy would be sort of like prattle falls and things like that, or easily understood humor. You have to really read between the lines sometimes to get what she's talking about. So she has her life all figured out. She's not happy with it, but it's figured out. She has a friend who's a vicar of the church, and she's friends with his sister, and she works with elderly gentlewomen, whatever that means really. She doesn't go into that too much. And then her life is sort of turned around when this couple move in next door, Helena and Rockingham, who she finds out is Rocky. And she sort of has this crush on this woman's husband. And it goes on from there. And her life starts changing. She meets their friends. She's introduced to a new sort of life, and the trajectory goes on from there. But it's much more than that because of Barbara Pym's writing. So I'm going to read you the part where she just meets this couple. She meets Helena first, actually. So she's talking about, we were, superficially at any rate, a very unlikely pair to become friendly. She was fair-headed and pretty, gaily dressed in corduroy trousers and a bright jersey, while I, mousy and rather plain anyway, drew attention to these qualities with my shapeless overall and old fawn skirt. Let me hasten to add that I am not at all like Jane Eyre, who must have given hope to so many plain women who tell their stories in the first person, nor have I ever thought of myself as being like her. So this is what you have to expect from Excellent Women by Barbara Pym. So tell me, have you read any Barbara Pym? Like I said, she's an underrated writer even now. And I think that if you like this world, it's almost like Jane Austen. You get lost in the world of Barbara Pym. And I love her world. And I'm not a big collector of books, but in this case, I will collect every book that she wrote, that she read. So thank you so much for watching my early January wrap-up video. I am reading other books now, and I didn't want all the books to get too long that I couldn't really get into the details of what I liked and what I didn't like, because I'm Freddie calls himself sluggish reader, but I'm also a slow reader in the sense that I like to close read. I want to read exactly what is happening and what's behind the words, if that makes any sense to you. And like I said, thank you so much. Hello, my new subscribers. Please stay with me, and I'll be back very soon with a new video. And until then, I wish you happiness, joy in this new year, peace, and as always, aloha.